Go to the All right, so welcome to our May 26th Visionary Method call. So this is our final call of May. Don't know where the month went, but I want to start by celebrating some wins. The last 2 weeks, we haven't really had a chance to celebrate wins because we had Alex from Fook 2 weeks ago, and then we had Vera last week with the words we wear. And so I want you to think, has anything wonderful happened in your business, in your life in the last couple of weeks that you would like to celebrate? I know a few people who aren't here, unfortunately, have some really exciting wins. We had lots of people launching their websites in the last 2 weeks. So just quick shout out to Lara and to Diana, who's not here, and to Rhonda. There's just been a lot of website building going on. So if you want to, what I'll do is I'll ask them to join next week's call so we can celebrate them properly. How about that? Okay, now I want to hear all your wins. So Nia, we'd love to hear from you.
Well, you already know my win, but I quit my day job.
Yahoo!
It was very spontaneous but also like very needed. So they're kind of like saving a place for me in the fall. So if I want to go back, I can. But the idea is that I will be off fully for the summer starting in June. So this is my last week. So
I'm so happy for you.
I know. It's crazy.
Much as I know you won't need to go back, it's always just nice to have that peace of mind too, that they obviously like you and appreciate your work. And
yeah, it's nice to have like this sort of like safety net, like mentally. So I know that like, okay, if anything happens where like I just need a little extra cash, then I'm like set. But the hope is that, yeah, like I won't have to go back. So
totally. And I love that. It's like being risk averse while taking a risk. So I think that that's the perfect balance. So congrats.
Thanks.
Trina, you have a win. We want to celebrate you.
Yes. I've been like toying with some ideas because, COVID, I had to move out here in BC with my mom, and it's more of like a personal win, but I thought financially the good thing to do would be, because like I love my mom, I don't want to live with her for a long time, it's just
what.
But I really want to travel, and it's kind of been my dream to just travel and do things. So I bought a camper van and I pick it up Monday. And I'm gonna be camping out through my van and working and traveling through Canada. And when I can, I'm gonna go to the States and just truck around. I'm pretty pumped about it.
I'm beyond jealous. Oh my gosh. Can I come with you?
I was gonna say, I'm coming through Ontario. I'll just pick you up.
I would love that. And let's meet up for sure. And you should definitely chat with, Charlotte is currently living in a van as well. So if you ever need tips, then I can link you up with her, and I'm sure she'll share. But that is so exciting. Congrats. I'll have to pick your brain on that more.
I pick her up Monday, and her name is Tracy Chatvan. She comes.
Okay, that's a win on its own.
I can't take credit for the name. She comes with it, but
branded vehicle. I love it. I love a good brand name. That's awesome. So exciting. Mark, how about you?
So Trina, that's awesome. I have many stories of hitchhiking with Westphalias through the Rockies. So we'll just put our thumbs out as you come through. When I guess the big thing for me is my 8 weeks of 200 stores came to a close last Friday night. So I still have a mountain of paperwork to get through, but the first run is done. And the cool thing that came out, it was I got a call from one of my partners, and he calls me on a Tuesday, and he said, I just want to let you know, he says, there was a big meeting last Friday at 4:00. And I went, oh, that's never a good thing. He goes, no. He said, the client just called and wanted to thank us all for all the incredible work we've done. And they basically want to use us pretty much exclusively now for all their in-store installations and stuff like that. So we were pretty excited about that. So it's we'll see where that takes us, but
That's awesome. Good for you. I know there's no shortage of work in your vicinity right now. So way to keep up with it, and congrats on finishing the 200 stores. You are amazing. Always amazing. Christine, we'd love to hear your win.
I wrapped up my first 12-week group last week, and everybody saw improvements in their symptoms. Everybody is feeling amazing. I had a few refer new clients in that are coming into my next intake. I have a few that are joining me again in June that they want to continue. One that wants to go in for my September one that she kind of wants to navigate, see how she does over the summer months by herself. So yeah, my June intake is full. I didn't advertise for it at all. And September already has a wait list. So things have been going really well.
So good. And you know what? This is just the start of the roller coaster, right? Because once you build like 10, 20, 30 positive testimonials, like the referrals are going to be endless as that ripples out to people's friends and networks and families. So congrats. That's so awesome. And the fact that you have people on a wait list for September is pretty cool. So many wins. Wow. Very exciting. Thank you all for sharing. We'd love to celebrate you. Before we dive into today's conversation, which is all around dealing with imposter syndrome. So one of the most, I guess, requested and talked about topics, not only in the early stages of launching a business, but really the whole journey. Like it never goes away. So I think this is a topic that I'm really excited to be sharing with you all today and to have a conversation around. But before we dive into that, I just wanted to, number one, say thank you to everyone who showed up to co-working last week. Wow, time warp. And the next one will be the third Wednesday of June. So if you want to mark that down, from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. And then the other announcement is too, that next week we kick off our marketing mastery group. So I know you all got an email about it yesterday. And if it's something that you feel like you might want to join, we're giving, I think, a 45% discount to all Visionary Method students. So really it's kind of like the next step. Once you feel like you're secure in the foundation of your business or you're ready to build out the marketing strategy, we're going through the 9 principles of marketing mastery, really just breaking them down week by week into 30 minutes of a training, 30 minutes of homework and like what your actual challenge is for that week, and then 30 minutes of live coaching Q&A. So they're 90-minute calls, 90 days in a row. 90-minute calls, 1 call a week for like the total is 90 days of the program. So if you might be interested, definitely send me a message today. And I'd love to tell you more, or you can just go to visionarymarketingcourse.com. And again, it might not be something you're interested in, but we're really going to be diving deep into building your marketing playbook. So that big document that really houses the entire strategy. And we're going to be doing a lot of testing and iterating together. So wanted to make sure you all know about that opportunity. And if you want the promo code, please let me know. So I think that is all our announcements. So I want to get into today's topic of imposter syndrome. So curious if you can just kind of give me a yes or a no in the chat. Do you experience imposter syndrome ever? Like it could be once a month, once a week. Okay, we got 100%. Yes. Oh, yes. Okay. I pulled up an interesting stat that actually said an estimated 70% of the population feel these symptoms of imposter syndrome. So if you've ever felt like you have doubts that you can be successful or that any successes or wins you've had are actually warranted, if you feel kind of like undeserving of delivering the material that you do, that's definitely something that I have struggled with in the past. A lot of you might feel like somebody is going to eventually discover that you're not as smart as you say you are, or that you can't actually produce the results that you're claiming you can. You're worried that you're almost coming across as a fraud, or that somebody's basically going to come knocking on your door and be like, hey, you're not actually a good marketer, or you're not actually a good consultant, or you know, you're a fraud nutritionist because you're not a scientist as well, and you don't understand this. So it's those types of feelings that 70% of the population is feeling, which is quite shocking. And I think the hard thing with imposter syndrome is that just having like one moment of uncertainty is sometimes all that needs to happen to completely derail you, right? Like you may have wins and successes and things are going well, but then one day you're delivering a webinar and all of a sudden somebody calls you out on something, and that's enough to like bring you back down to this really low place. And it takes a lot to lift yourself back up. And then you go to bed and you're like, oh, you know what? Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Or maybe I should just go back to work a corporate job. Or maybe I'm not the right person to be a personal trainer, or whatever it is. And so I think the overarching like definition of imposter syndrome is really just like a feeling of inadequacy, or of they're going to find out who I really am. So that's what we're going to cover today. I'm really going to talk about some practical things that we can all do. And then we can kind of do a little, you know, story sharing and conversation around it, because it almost seems like nobody is immune to it. And I'm actually dealing with it right now, which is really interesting, because when Alex and I planned this training, I don't think I was dealing with it. Like I responded, one of you commented and said that this would be a great topic to cover. And then I had a marketing client reach out. So many of you guys know I do kind of private marketing coaching. And this was what I would call like a medium to large size business. And to give you some context, their annual revenue is upwards of, and it's like a very small team, like maybe 6-7 people, but their annual revenue is sitting at like $1 to $2 million. And the company is founded by a marketer. So it's a coaching company, but it's founded by somebody who like, he is a marketing expert. And they recently hired me to do their entire marketing strategy. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing asking me? You're the marketer. Like, why would you want any of my opinions, right? And I still feel like I have no business sharing what I know about marketing with somebody who has like literally has about 20 years on my age, who's been around the block far more times than I have. And it almost forced me to say, sorry, I don't do like marketing consulting for businesses like yours, because I don't really advertise that. But then I realized like, no, because I do have unique life experience. I have to work on this mindset that I bring actually a very different perspective to the table, because I am 20 years younger than this person and than a lot of the people on the team. And I'm going to share everything I know while I build out their strategy. I'm going to do it in service of their company. And I'm not doing it to like pretend I'm the best, because I'm not doing it to like prove anything, but I am going to show up in service of everything they need, give them all that I have, all my authenticity, all my passion for marketing and for building out these playbooks for different companies. And that's what I have to keep reminding myself. Like, I don't have to be them. I don't have to have a certain life experience. And so I ended up saying yes. And I was like, yes, I would love to do this for you. But every morning I wake up, and when I spend an hour or two, because it's like a pretty intensive project right now, when I spend time doing it, I'm always like checking myself, being like, what the heck am I doing? What the heck? What is the team going to think when I hand this over to them? But again, I mean, it's just a reminder that no matter where you are on the journey, like it's just going to keep creeping in, because there's always going to be a new level. And while you're operating in this chapter of your life, you're always going to be wondering, like, how am I possibly going to serve in that next arena, or in this arena? How am I possibly going to make clients happy? Right. So it really doesn't go away. So I guess I just wanted to share that story, because it's especially pertinent in my life right now. So I think like what I really want to focus on is number one, the problem with letting ourselves experience too much imposter syndrome. And I think the biggest thing that comes to mind for me is that we only have a finite amount of energy in a day, right? Like, you just can't do it all. And when we're working with clients, it takes a lot of energy. And so in order to show up in a peak state for our clients, like to get that 5-star review from them, to be fully present with them, to be totally immersed in client work and really helping that client in the way they need to be helped. If you're also fighting off imposter syndrome in that same moment, you are not performing at your peak. And that's an issue, right? So before you jump on the phone with people, before you start coaching a client, and if you feel that bit of imposter syndrome, I think it's actually so vital that for you guys as service providers, you have to conquer it first. Otherwise, you show up to your interactions in like this 60 to 75% range, and you're critiquing yourself in your mind while you're trying to coach someone else. And that allows you to not deliver the full product that you're promising. So I've been thinking a lot about this lately because, of course, there's always things we're worrying about and we bring into our business, because for a lot of you guys, your business and your life are very intermeshed. I feel that way all the time. But again, if the point of growing our business is to get clients an amazing transformation and to really like work backwards from what does it take to get a 5-star review out of every client, I think you have to squash imposter syndrome. Otherwise, it's going to take away from what you're able to provide to that client. So I just want to pause right there. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments on that? Or like maybe you've dealt with that before, or I don't know if anyone does want to add anything before I move on, but it's definitely been a conversation I've been mulling over lately. If you do want to share, just let me know. It seems like most of you have dealt with it before. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of hear from everybody at some point on today's conversation and see what's been working for you to squash it. So we'll definitely do a sharing of all tips at the end. Okay, so a few notes that I've kind of put together just based on knowing that we were going to have this conversation today and trying to figure out what would be especially relevant. I'd say the first thing that I came across is the terminology that we're using when we say, I have imposter syndrome. And syndrome tends to make it seem like it's some sort of disease that, very few people are diagnosed with. But I think one of the best shifts I saw was calling it an imposter experience. Like it's not something that you need to be diseased with all the time. We're seeing 70% of people are experiencing it. Like it's not really a syndrome. It's just an experience that we're all going through, and really nobody is immune to it. So I kind of like that frame shift of not defining it as a syndrome, because nobody's going to diagnose you with this. So that was the first thing that really resonated with me. Second thing that kind of popped up was the fact that there really is no level accomplishment that you will hit that is going to mute the voice, the voice that's like, who the heck are you? Or why would anyone hire you? So like, as you start to work with more clients, as you start to make more money, like it's never going away. Maybe for some of you it will, or it'll kind of get swept under the rug for a bit, but eventually it kind of works its way back, because as you grow, as you start working with, more challenging clients or bigger clients, or you're forced to innovate your processes, it all creeps back in. And so I think just learning how to manage it is the best thing that we can do. And I'll share kind of one exercise on that. So, okay, so let me take you through this little exercise. Some of you might have done it before. It's not my own intellectual property, but it's something that has helped me. And I wrote this down so that I could teach it to you. It's a very simple concept. It's basically like a four 4-step process for dealing with these feelings when they come up. So if you guys want to grab a pen and paper, or just like something that you can write on, a Kleenex, whatever it is. So the first thing I want you to do, like step 1, is basically identifying what are you thinking about yourself right now. And I want you to write down just one thought for the purpose of this exercise. So what are you thinking about yourself right now? Is it that somebody's going to figure out that you're not as smart as you claim to be? Is it that your client is going to realize that you don't know what you're talking about? Is it that, you don't feel like you'll be able to grow a certain level of business? What are you thinking about yourself right now? So write something down. You don't have to make it public or anything. So this is just for you. The next step is, what do you wish you could believe about yourself that you don't believe right now? So, comparing what you just wrote in step 1, well, what do you wish you could believe? Because you're obviously suffering from this plaguing thought. So, it's something you don't believe right now, but like it's the destination. What do you wish you could believe? Maybe it's that I wish I could believe that my clients will appreciate all of the knowledge, expertise, and life experience that I bring to our coaching. So now you have the first one, which is, what are you thinking about yourself now? Second one, which is, what do you wish you could believe about yourself? There's obviously some sort of gap happening. And so step 3 is really to kind of insert those stones in the water to allow you to cross from 1 to 2, but we're going to do it in baby steps. So I want you to brainstorm 3 thoughts that you can think now, like today, that you believe. 3 thoughts that can help you start shifting your mindset. So more baby, tangible thoughts. For example, I create in service of my clients every day. Or I only teach from my own experience and what I know to be true. Or I've accomplished many things in my life, so why can't I accomplish this? So try to get those 3 things down. And there's really no magic formula from here, but the idea is that by, repeating or putting these statements front and center somewhere where you're going to see them all the time. I was just listening to a podcast with the founder of Lululemon, and he does this. They're in his bathroom, like putting his goals and what he's working towards, like somewhere where he's going to see them every day. I don't know if that's just weird or if, obviously it's quite effective for some people. But making sure that those 3 baby rocks are things that you're going to focus on 1 time a day or multiple times a day. The more, the better, I guess, because you're trying to bridge the gap between people are going to find out that I'm not really that good of a marketer to I am going to, create massive change for every single business in Ontario or whatever the case is. So it's like those baby milestones are going to allow you to start embodying the bigger vision, right? The what's possible. And gosh, there are so many books just written on the power of mindset in what you want to do. It's adopting that mindset of, I am a great person to deliver this material, and I am unique in so many ways. Trina's saying Tony. Is this a Tony Robbins thing? Maybe. I can't see you on my screen yet. It's a Seth Godin thing. And a Seth Godin thing, yeah. Yeah, Mark and I were at the same event about a few weeks ago, and Seth Godin touched on this so brilliantly. Mark, do you have anything to share on like your takeaways from that Seth Godin training? I could pull up my notes. But
as I'm taking my notes here from today, I actually opened up my notes from that event, and I'm like copying. And I think, it was one of the things that he sort of jumped on right out of the gate. And he said, I think the big thing for me was this: I don't have a piece of paper to validate what I do. But he kind of hit it face on. He said, and I don't know if I got his wording exactly, but it was basically acting as an imposter is the only way you're going to bring your uniqueness, bring your thing to the world. Like it's almost like we're all imposters to start with. So, that's the only way you're going to bring something out. But, and I think he also touched on, like, as far as credentials go, and certainly, I know there's people in this group who have, credentials, who have the piece of paper, but he said, show me your worth, not your credentials. And, if we're going to make change happen, show me how you're going to make that change happen. I don't care if you got a piece of paper that tells me that you can do it. Right. So.
I love that. So good. What was the first line you said? It's like, we all start as imposters.
Something. Yeah. I can't remember exactly how he said it, but it was something to the effect of acting as an imposter is the only way to bring your idea into the world.
Yeah. Well, it's true, because like when we are first all gathering our unique methods, right? Especially before you have a lot of client testimonials and like really you just have the belief that like, I think I've assembled a program or a package or a training or a course that really, really works. You're probably going to feel like an imposter because you haven't stood up there and taught this method hundreds of times, and you're still looking for that validation that this thing can get you results. So you have to show up as an imposter in order to get to that point where your method is proven, where you have people saying, wow, Mark, everything that you've done for our store is amazing. And at that point, I think the imposter syndrome becomes less and less. But for most of us, we are showing up as nobody's, who cares about, this person or your business. And so you're kind of going to go through it regardless, because we all start somewhere and we all need to get that initial validation when there is none in existence. So I think that's great.
Yeah, and I'm just going through here. Like he went on. It's like, what can I do? And I think this talks. You talk so much about the islands and the boats, and he sort of said the same thing. And he said, we can make change happen. Who's it for? And it's not necessarily a demographic. It's what people believe in. So if they believe A and you can offer B, well, they're gonna migrate to that. And I think, and here's proof in the pudding. You say that, and you use the analogy of the islands, And here's Seth Godin basically saying the same thing. So did he copy what Kelsey said, or did Kelsey copy what Seth said? But the idea of it validates it, right? In some way, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I've heard that before. I guess that's really what I need to do to grow my business, right? Because now I've heard two people say the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, if anyone has a question or wants to add something, just let us know in the chat, type question or share. For me, some of the other times I've experienced it, and I will caveat this by saying I recently met a girl who is a happiness researcher and has a PhD in discovering like the logistics of happiness, what it takes to be happy. And she said to us with confidence, I have never experienced imposter syndrome. And a lot of her friends were there too. And they were like, you haven't, you're right. You've never had it before. So if you're still feeling like, I know Trina, you said you don't know if you've been through it, maybe you haven't, right? There is certainly a chance that there's the 30% here. And for me, like, I don't experience it a lot. It's relevant because I am going through a little bit of it right now. But for the most part, I think I've got enough tools, but yeah, maybe for some of us, we don't go through it. Trina.
Okay. It's not that I haven't been through it. I don't think I hear people talk about imposter syndrome and some people talk about it and I'll be like, oh, okay, I think I know what that means now. And then I hear other people talking about it. So I don't feel like I have a good definition on, just because of the different contexts that I've heard it being used. It sounds like everyone kind of has their own interpretation of it.
Agreed.
So I don't know if I clearly understand what imposter syndrome is, but for me, I suffered through depression, PTSD, and huge anxiety. And that was something that I recently was able to climb out of, using mindset strategies and techniques that I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but finding the core foundation of myself. And I'm actually just writing a blog post on it because it's Mental Health Awareness Month and it's nice to share and all this fun stuff. But my thing for me was, I think, when I used to be a people pleaser. I'm calling myself a recovering people pleaser now. And so it's one of these things where I used to operate in reaction mode because I wanted to make people happy and I wanted to fulfill that need. And so even from a business standpoint, instead of sticking up for, my values and the things that I really truly believed in to make, my business go further, and even for my clients, it would be more directed towards oh, okay, you want to go this way? Yeah, let's do that. And so there was a big conflicting issue with the inner me and what they wanted to do. And so I was operating from almost two different spaces. And that's kind of when I did that through all my life. So I felt very divided. And then when I stepped back, and I'm talking about, I was not able to function as a human being. I would go into panic attacks where I had one client, every time she emailed me, I would have a panic attack.
Wow.
Yeah. And I found ways to get out of that. And they're very interesting, weird ways. But anyway, when I started to kind of say, okay, I need to do something about this, one of the things I did was I picked one thing and I was like, I'm a good person. And I knew that. And then I operated from that. And that's the only thing I paid attention to. And as long as I paid attention to that one thing, okay, I'm going to answer this client's question. Does it fit this box? Yeah. Okay. And then once I got comfortable with that, I added another one. I'm an honest person. And I just piled it on from there. And ever since I've done that, and now I operate from these boxes that I know are me, like the Trina box, not the everybody else box.
Yeah.
It's I feel like I've stepped out of my version of whatever imposter syndrome was.
So good. And thank you for sharing all that really vulnerably. You said that you have some weird ways of getting out of it before you spiral. Can you share some of those interesting ones?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I shared this with you or not, but I came up with, so what happened was with this one client, we had a horrible working relationship. I was her employee. It got to a point where it's like, this is horrible.
Yeah.
Like my mental health is at stake. So there was a almost court case involved. Like there was all of this stuff. I ended up leaving. They actually asked me to still come back and work as a client on a client base with them. So it's like, okay, fine. Like maybe we just need to change the dynamics. Sure.
Yeah.
So I went and I worked back with them. And then every time the email notification on my computer would come up, I would go into panic. Like I would have physical symptoms, panicking, and like just totally crumble. So one day my email notification went off and I was like, okay, I haven't read the email. I don't know what this email contains. So I don't even know if there's anything bad in it, but I'm reacting so severely. So I realized like I had this like, oh, Pavlov's dogs connection. And so I thought, well, what if I could change the meaning of the bell? What if I could change the meaning of the notification? So at the time I was really heavy into working out. So, and like, that was my thing. So I was like, I want a nice behind, like, that's my goal. I'm going to get a good booty. So I'm going to do squats. So every time that email went off, I would get into 20 squats and I had to do like, even if I was panicking, I would be like 20 squats.
Yeah.
And I think after a week, like I would get to squat 10 and I would just start laughing because one, I was like, it was so ridiculous, like, you know, and that I was able to totally disassociate. So being able to realize like the big, huge power of my mind and like how I could control kind of my reaction to things, that was the first thing that changed my life and like really just kind of went up and beyond.
Whoa, that is insane. So basically what you did was you identified a trigger or something that was making you feel, maybe it's lesser than, maybe for you it was just like anxious, panicky. For other people it might be a different emotion that comes up each time the text message goes off or each time somebody says something to you. And then what you did was you identified that and then chose something positive to do instead. And then force yourself to do the thing enough times.
You have to practice it.
You have to practice. Yeah. And then I always think of the quote or the phrase that mood follows action. So you get into action doing something different, and then your mood hopefully is reflective of that new positive habit.
Yeah, because like it's one thing to be like, okay, like I'm gonna do this. I'm like, you know, we want to do things all the time, but it's really committing to trying to put that into practice. And there was another guy that I watched. He said it. He had this thing where he said, you know, it's like when you go on a coffee date with a friend and you say, hey, meet me at this coffee shop, 4 p.m. Like, let's go, let's have a coffee. You show up and they're late, and you're like, come on, just like get to the coffee shop. And then so you make another date and then again they're late, and this keeps on repeating. You start to kind of have this view of this friend, right? Like you've now, it's the same for yourself. When you make commitments to yourself and you do not meet them, you're starting to devalue that. And when he put it that way, I was like, oh yeah, that's like, say what I'm gonna do or do what I'm gonna say, whatever the, you know.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a good example. And you're right. It's like the continual letting down of ourselves that perhaps leads to, in this case of today's conversation, that leads to imposter syndrome, because maybe we keep talking about things that we don't even feel qualified to talk about, or, you know, kind of going back into my own archives. Many years ago, I had a network marketing business, and the concept of network marketing is that you duplicate the person's business. And I still like, you know, I fully, for any of you who are in that industry or thinking about getting into it, I think there's so much to be had from diving into that type of business model. And I learned so much from those years. But the whole concept, so going back, the whole concept of network marketing is that you duplicate the person who has already built success. And so I remember in my 20s when I started it, I basically took somebody else's framework and they handed it over to me. And then I would go teach that exact same thing. And I felt like an imposter the whole way through because none of it was my material. And I was standing up there literally telling other people's stories, sharing other people's slide decks, just kind of like regurgitating. And for me, that triggered imposter syndrome because none of it was my own experience. And so what I realized was for me to completely like push imposter syndrome aside, especially in the future when I was launching the visionary method, I could only teach what I knew to be true. I couldn't just like study someone else and teach that framework. Like I had to teach from that place of I've been through this. This is my life experience, because then I never felt like an imposter, right? Sure, maybe I don't have like everything perfect inside this course, but I do teach from everything I've been through and like what I know to be true. Because if I try to teach you guys something that like I'm completely out to lunch on and that I just like heard somebody else talk about, I'll feel that imposter, that inadequacy. And I know Trina, you said you didn't know what the definition was. Like the easiest definition I pulled from the internet was just that imposter syndrome can be defined as a collection of feelings of inadequacy that persist despite evident success. So it's like there's no reason why we should be feeling them, but those thoughts that undermine us just persist. So, and it's cyclical for sure. Mark, and then we'll go to Christine.
Yeah, so I think you touched on something just there, Kelsey, about the original content. And I think that's one thing that I've always experienced. Like I've dealt with marketers for my whole career. I've dealt with marketing departments and stuff like that. And I've been a supplier to them. But I've never really considered myself a marketer per se. I don't have a marketing degree, right? Mm-hmm. And even when I listen to someone like yourself, or I listen to someone like Alex Wilson, it's mm-hmm. like, wow, like these guys, like if I was to stand up at a conference, mm-hmm. like they would just blow me out of the water, right? But then I think when you bring it back to the original content, and I've taken things you said, I've taken things Alex, I've taken my own things, and I've put it into my own words. I put it into my own understanding and put it out to the world. Mm-hmm. And, just like anything else you would research, right? You kind of take that research and you massage it and you do whatever and give credit where credit is due. And I'm not going to stand up and quote Seth Godin and take it as my own. But I think people, and depending on what your market, depending on what your audience is, I've given presentations, marketing, branding presentations, and like, just I see the reaction of people's faces, and they their minds are blown by it, right? I'm like, oh, mm-hmm. well, I guess I really do have something to offer here, kind of thing. Like, I'm not making this stuff up, and then I go back to, yeah, I don't have a degree, but I've been doing this for 20 years. I guess that means something to people. So, so as I say, so kind of, when Trina asked the question, well, what is it? How do you feel it? I felt it, and this is, I mean, I think where I'm going to go, what I mean by this, Kels, but mm-hmm. like, I felt it by things you say or by things Alex says. And it's like, wow, they're real marketers, right? Well, so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all just the story we've crafted in our head, but you're right. Like, nobody is really inventing new concepts these days, but everyone is adding their own spin onto what they know and like being the knowledge curator, packaging up a bunch of things they've heard. And so it's like this story we tell ourselves that, oh, when I listen to this professional on stage, they must be at a whole other level. But it's like, wait, they probably read 20 books last year and then compiled everything they knew that they could teach forward from those 20 books. And so, yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I think it totally is just a reframe of realizing that nobody's reinventing the wheel, right? And you have just as much legitimacy, experience, and we live in a self-taught world now. Like, it's no longer about the credentials for so many professions. We've cut the middleman and people are going straight to the source. So straight to Mark, straight to Christine, straight to Leah to get the information that they want. And so that's why sometimes the credentials aren't as pertinent, even though we might feel like an imposter, but people want to go to you rather than going to the middleman of a university or college or diploma program, because they can do it faster now. So I think, yeah, the world is changing. Christine.
Yeah, I think that definition that you gave pretty much nails it on the head, because even just one of my most recent experiences with imposter syndrome last week, I had a big moment where I've been struggling a lot with my personal health and realizing that I needed to see a professional. And so when I reached out to a professional and had a session, not being able to operate from where I can normally operate, I'm really struggling, mentally and physically. And then seeing a professional and then feeling afterwards like, oh my God, I have no right to teach people about nutrition. I have no right to, I'm not practicing what I preach because right now I'm not operating from that best space that I can, because right now I have to just take care of that mental aspect of it. And so when I got off the call with the professional, I just had this complete meltdown. I thought, yeah, total imposter syndrome. I have no right to be teaching clients. I'm not helping anybody. I'm not doing anything. And this was all in the middle of getting all this positive feedback from the women I've been working with for 12 weeks. And so, having those doubts when you're getting that positive feedback and proof that actually what you're believing about yourself isn't true, that to me, really struck a chord with, this is imposter syndrome. And while I can't show up right now to the best of my abilities, that doesn't mean that I can't coach women to be able to lead them to be able to show up. I can still coach them, even though right now implementing it, I hit a wall for myself. I know I have the knowledge, I have the experience, I've done it before. I'm working to be able to do it again, but you can't go from crawling to running when you've sustained an injury. You kind of have to start, repairing that so that you can show up in that way again too.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Yeah. I think that is something we are all going to go through, being in that phase of, I'm no longer maybe the living example of the method that I teach, and realizing that that is so normal, and reassuring yourself that that doesn't make you any less of an expert, but just that giving yourself grace that our world is way too complicated for you to always be thriving in your method. Your method works. But again, the world is effing complicated. There's so many facets to your life, to managing your brain, your mind, your body, your spirit, that with everything else going on outside of your method, things are constantly competing for the attention of you staying in that framework. Doesn't mean that it doesn't work, but that's what our story is. Like, well, then who am I to keep teaching this if here I am needing to seek professional help? It's like, but that is the, oh man, that's the death of a business, right? When you feel like a fraud because all of a sudden you're not in that peak capacity that you teach others to be in. But yeah, again, I just keep coming back to, like, world's too complicated for you to always be the living proof. And we have to give ourselves grace on that. Zoe.
I was just going to say further to that, one thought. I often will think of a hockey coach. So a hockey coach, the guy in the suit behind the bench, with the players, he's in his suit. He's not even geared up for athletics, often has a belly, right? And he can't do what he's coaching anymore. Maybe he could one day, maybe not even at that level, but that doesn't impact what he can offer. Like, even in that exact moment, like, they're, obviously super valuable part of the whole team. And so I often, when I'm feeling like frustrated with that, or I'm thinking, oh, I'm not like at my highest peak or walking my walk, I often will think, but think about the hockey coach. Like, it doesn't always have to match exactly, in that exact moment. So that was just one thing. But I as another point, I was also thinking, along with the 4 steps you gave us, which was awesome, I love to have steps. In step 3, when we're talking about what we can believe, I just thought further along with what we'd heard is I like that idea of like, because the negativity bias is so strong, and we all know that in life and in the world, that to take maybe because I'm newer in my business, so to take any small win, so not just what I believe, but actual win with clients specifically, if that's, or marketing, because that's scary for me, or being seen, to write them out and have them handy along with maybe my I believe statement, so they can help us with our little steps along the way as proof of some positivity to help counteract the negativity when that pops into our head. So I was just thinking that along with that, when I do step 3 on my own, I could add in some of those as well, of things I have already done, not just want to like know about myself, but proof. Yeah, to help.
I love that. Yeah. And like having somewhere where you display that, to be reminded of your beliefs, be reminded of those things that you are embodying right now. It's just that tiny little mental trigger that is going to keep us on track, especially when we have the dips, the regular dips of going through our days feeling like, who am I to share this? So that is so much interesting conversation around this. I'm definitely fascinated too with that concept of how we deal with ourselves when we're not the living proof of, because I think like, especially for anyone in the health and wellness industry, not going to be 110% healthy, or even like for someone like Zoe or a happiness coach, like, are you always going to be at the peak of happiness, the pinnacle of happiness? Probably not, right? Does that discount you as a service provider? Hell no, because like Zoe said, it's different to be the coach than it is to, be coaching, right? So Trina, go for it.
I also found like one thing that was hard for me to navigate, and then once I did, it was super helpful, was it's very it's very useful to picture where you want to be, right? Like you have these steps on like, what do you wish you could believe, and like really understanding like where you want to be. But one thing that I guess might be the imposter syndrome thing that would come up is there's a difference from being like, hey, here's my vision and this is what I'm going for, and then offering advice like you've done it. And again, like you were saying, making sure that like the stuff that you've lived and you've experienced is really where you're coming from, rather than, because I get super excited about where I'm going and I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm on this path, but I have to like dial it back sometimes and be like, hey, have I done that yet? No. Have I done that yet? No. So I can't give that advice. And if I want to give that advice, I better start doing it. And like, that's almost kind of a way for me to start like running, because I'm like, okay, well, like I want to give that advice. I feel like that's like good advice. So I better start putting that into practice. So then all of a sudden it's like this trajectory towards like what I'm going for. So that's something that kind of it's a fun game that I play in my head.
It's like you're almost like a squirrel chasing a rabbit or something. Like the rabbit is the vision and you're like, I want to get there, and you're running, teaching what you know, realizing that as soon as you catch it, you're able to teach that concept forward too. But you're right, until you put it into practice, prove it to yourself, be like, yes, this works, or practice with case studies, right? You can always offer knowledge for free. Then you've got that testimonial or that living proof. Okay, I can teach this. I do understand the framework around it. I feel confident and I know my belief in teaching this concept. But you're right, until you've embodied it.
Yeah. And that's another thing that's important too, is like when you come up to these roadblocks that are like, oh my God, I don't know this, I can't teach it. Instead of like getting down on yourself, being like, okay, like, how can I put this into action so I can get that confidence and can teach it? Because I think sometimes when we want to be somewhere and we think we should be a certain place, but we're not, we get really down on ourselves. So instead, like trying to figure out, like it's part of the process. Like we do have to learn, we do have to grab these teachings, and it's really fun once you start to just make it part of the everyday go ahead.
It's true. And I think kind of in a final parting thought, if there is something that you're all currently thinking about or wish you could be teaching, but you know you'd feel like an imposter, ask yourself what Trina just said, is like, what do I need to do to make myself comfortable enough to teach this? And for some of you, it'll be going back to school. For some of you, it's literally like read a couple books on it, compile your notes, and highlight the top 3 learnings in yellow, so that when you teach the concept, you can say this, this, and that, and like try it out, have conversations around it. That's what this community is for too, like to test out what's going on and to be able to give each other feedback on what we're all up to. So cool. Okay, well, I think we'll wrap it up there because we are at the top of the hour. Thank you for everybody sharing and kind of opening up today, and just for participating in the conversations that I know so many of us are having inside of our own heads and dealing with. So yeah, it's been a fun hour. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back next week with another session. We haven't put out the June schedule yet, so stay tuned in the Facebook group for the June schedule. There's 5 Wednesdays in June, so we've got lots of content coming. We will be relaunching the Visionary Method, kind of bringing in a new cohort, so there'll be hopefully lots of new faces coming in June. And as always, you guys are welcome to join every single call that interests you. So I want this to be the space that you can show up where you don't have to coach people. You can show up, have the conversations that need to be had, and learn and apply and grow. So love you all, and we will see you next Wednesday. And you can stay tuned for the schedule that'll be posted in the next few days. So bye, everybody. Thanks for a great call today.